My name is Renata Voss. I'm 34 years old. 3 years ago, I found out I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving by reading about it on my family's Facebook page. Not a phone call, not a text. A photograph. My mother had posted a picture of the dining room table set for 12 people, candles lit, the good china out, a caption that said, "Grateful for family." I counted the chairs in the photo. I recognized every face that would fill them. Mine wasn't going to be one of them. I sat with my phone in my lap for a long time. Then I called my mother and asked, as calmly as I could, whether there had been some kind of mistake. She said, "Renata, you know how you get. It's easier this way. We just want everyone to enjoy the holiday." You know how you get. What she meant was, you ask too many questions. You don't smile at the right times. You notice things we'd rather you didn't notice, and you say so, which makes people uncomfortable. What she meant was that I was the wrong kind of present to have at a table, and it was easier to set one fewer chair than to learn how to make room for me. What she didn't know was that I had been quietly making room for myself somewhere else for 3 years. And when their landlord left a voicemail asking for my name and my signature, the table was already set, just not the way anyone expected. Before I tell you what that voicemail was about and what it meant, please like and subscribe, but only if this story is speaking to something in you. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? I love knowing where you all are. Now let me take you back, because the Thanksgiving photograph was never really the beginning. Growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, I was the daughter who didn't fit the frame my parents had built for our family. My parents had very clear ideas about what a pleasant family looked like, and for the most part, those ideas were satisfied by my younger brother Danny. Quick picture. Dad was a mid-level manager at a manufacturing company, steady, image-conscious, the kind of man who cared deeply about what the neighbors thought and very little about what his children actually felt. Mom organized everything, meals, holidays, relationships, with the efficiency of someone running a hospitality operation rather than a home. Danny was charming, easy, handsome in the way that opened doors. And I was the one who read too much and asked too many questions, and made adults uncomfortable at dinner parties by taking things literally when everyone else understood we were supposed to smile and move on. I was not the easy child. I knew it young. When I was 10, my class put on a science fair, and I won 3rd place for a project on water filtration I'd built by hand from materials I found in the garage. I came home with my ribbon and my display board, and the news that my teacher had said I had a natural aptitude for systems thinking. My mother's response was to show me a photograph she'd framed that afternoon. Danny, age 7, had been in a local commercial for a regional grocery chain. Just a background shot, 2 seconds of screen time. She'd had it printed and framed and hung in the hallway. "Isn't he wonderful?" she said. My ribbon went into a drawer. I told myself that wasn't a comparison, that they were just different kinds of proud. When I was 17, I was accepted into a summer apprenticeship program at a civil engineering firm downtown. Competitive, paid, only 6 spots in the city. I told my parents at dinner. My father asked how I'd gotten the application form. I said my school counselor had recommended the program. He nodded slowly, in the way he nodded when something didn't fit the picture he had in his head. "That's a lot of time to commit. Danny's baseball schedule is going to need some coordination this summer. We'll need help with rides." I did the apprenticeship. I also drove Danny to 11 baseball games. Nobody said thank you. I told myself that was just what families did. Pitched in, carried more when it was needed. But the Thanksgiving invitation, or the absence of it, was different because it was explicit. There was no way to reframe it, no charitable interpretation that made it something other than what it was. My parents had set a table for 12 people and deliberately not counted me. And then they did it again the next year. And the year after that. The second year I found out through Danny, who called to ask if I was coming and then went quiet when I said I hadn't been invited. "Oh," he said, "I didn't know that." I believed him. Danny had always been kind to me in a private, slightly helpless way. He loved me the way people love someone they don't know how to protect. The third year, my mother didn't even tell me the date had changed. I found out 2 days before when a cousin asked if I'd be driving up. I said no. I didn't explain why. Each of those 3 Thanksgivings, I made my own dinner. The first year, I cried through most of it. The second year, I called a friend and we made soup together over the phone. The third year, I cooked a full meal from scratch, roasted chicken, sweet potatoes, homemade rolls, and I sat down and ate it at my own table, and it was, genuinely, one of the best meals I'd had in a long time. Something was shifting in me. It had been shifting for a while. Her name is Gloria Park. She was my supervisor at the engineering firm where I'd worked since I was 24, a woman in her 50s who had built her career with a combination of rigorous precision and an absolute refusal to be underestimated. She had hired me 6 months out of college when I had very little to offer beyond a strong GPA and the report from that summer apprenticeship a decade earlier. And she had watched me grow from someone competent into someone excellent with the quiet satisfaction of a person who had recognized something early and been proven right. After the first Thanksgiving I wasn't invited to, I came into work the following Monday looking, apparently, like someone who had spent the weekend reassembling herself from smaller pieces. Gloria closed her office door. "Sit down," she said. "Tell me." I told her. Not all of it at once, I'm not a fast sharer by nature, but enough. The photograph, the caption, the chair count, the phone call with my mother. Gloria listened. When I finished, she said, "I want to tell you something, and I need you to hear it as your supervisor, not as someone who is trying to make you feel better." I said, "Okay." "You are the most analytically precise person on this team. You see problems before they become problems. You communicate clearly, you document everything, and you never overclaim. Those qualities are extraordinary and they are rare. They are also exactly the qualities that make certain people uncomfortable, because certain people would rather not have their problems seen before they become problems, because then the problems might have to be addressed." She paused. "I don't know your family, but I know that what you just described, being excluded because you notice things and say them, is not a character flaw. It's a gift that someone has convinced you is an inconvenience. Do you understand the difference?" I sat with that for a moment. "I'm starting to," I said. "Good," she said, "because I'm promoting you to project lead on the Henderson account, and I need you to believe you deserve it." That promotion was the beginning of a quieter, steadier, more intentional chapter of my life. I stopped explaining myself to my parents. I stopped calling on holidays to ask if there had been any change in plans. I stopped making myself available for the occasional call that came when they needed something. Help navigating a bill, a second opinion on a contractor, whatever it was. And then finding myself unincluded again at the next gathering. I was not cold about it. I returned calls within a day or two. I was pleasant. I just stopped offering more than was being offered back, and I stopped expecting warmth from a direction that had demonstrated, repeatedly, that warmth was not coming. I threw myself into work instead, and work gave back. In my first year as project lead, the Henderson account came in $340,000 under budget and 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Gloria put my name on the firm's internal newsletter. We were invited to present our methodology at a regional conference. I stood at a podium in front of 200 engineers and explained how we'd done it, and a man in the front row took notes. The year after that, I was promoted again, senior project engineer, a pay increase that moved me from comfortable to genuinely secure. I bought my own home at 32, a small craftsman house with a good yard and a porch I'd been thinking about for years. My name on the deed, my down payment, my mortgage, mine, completely. My parents came to see the house once. My father walked through it with the expression he used when he was trying to decide whether something was impressive enough to mention to other people. My mother said the kitchen was smaller than she'd expected. Danny texted me afterward. "House is great, Rennie. You did good." That landed the way small kindnesses from him always did. Sincere and slightly too late, and still somehow worth having. I didn't tell my parents about the second promotion. I didn't tell them about the conference. I had stopped performing my accomplishments for an audience that had never quite been able to applaud. And then, 14 months ago, I got a phone call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't pick up. I'd been in the middle of reviewing site plans, fully absorbed, and the number had an area code I didn't recognize at first. I picked up on the last ring. A man introduced himself as David Farrell. He said he was a property manager in Cincinnati and that he was calling about a rental application. My parents, I learned in the next 2 minutes, had been renting an apartment for 9 years from a private landlord, an older man who had recently passed away. The property had transferred to his son, who had hired a management company to handle it going forward. Standard lease renewal, updated terms, new paperwork. There was one complication. My parents had listed me as their emergency contact and financial guarantor on the original lease, 9 years ago, without telling me. My name, my phone number, and a forged approximation of my signature on a document that made me financially responsible if they ever defaulted. David Farrell was calling because the new lease required all guarantors to re-sign, with updated identification and verified contact information. He was expecting me to come in. I asked him to read me the name on the document. He did. It was mine. I asked him to read me the signature. He described it. It was not my handwriting. I was very still for a moment. "Mr. Farrell," I said, "I was never informed I was listed as a guarantor on that lease. I did not sign any document related to my parents' rental. I'd like a copy of whatever you have on file, and then I'd like to speak with someone about how to proceed." He was quiet for a beat. "Oh," he said. "I see." He emailed me the document within the hour. There are things that stop you completely. Things where you read a page and then put it down and look out the window and do not look away for a long time. My name, on a lease I had never seen, on a financial obligation I had never agreed to, on paperwork that had been renewed twice over 9 years, with what appeared to be my forged signature each time. I called Gloria that evening. She'd been through something similar with a business partner years before and had given me, over time, enough context about financial and legal matters to know what questions to ask. "Don't call your parents yet," she said immediately. "Get a consultation first. Document everything you have. Then you'll know what position you're in before you have any conversation." I took an appointment with a family law and contracts attorney named Robert Selby the following week. I brought the email from David Farrell, screenshots of the original document, and a notepad full of careful notes because that's how I process things, by writing them down until I understand them. Robert Selby was thorough and plain-spoken and didn't soften things unnecessarily. "The forged signature is serious," he said. "Whether it rises to the level you'd want to pursue legally is a separate question. That's your call, and there are emotional and relational factors that only you can weigh. But from a purely legal standpoint, you have been unknowingly bound to a financial liability for 9 years on the basis of a document you didn't sign. That is not a small thing." He explained my options. I could file a formal dispute with the management company, removing my name from the lease entirely. I could, separately, pursue action regarding the forgery. Or I could do both. Or I could contact my parents first and give them the opportunity to explain and respond before anything formal moved forward. I went home and sat with those options for 3 days. On the 4th day, I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring, which she almost never does, which told me someone had already called her, probably the management company, asking why their guarantor seemed to have no knowledge of the arrangement. "Renata," she said. "Hi, Mom," I said. I kept my voice very level. "I'd like to talk about the lease." A long pause. "It was just a formality. We just needed a name for the paperwork." "My name, without asking me." "We knew you'd say yes." "You knew I'd say yes," I repeated. "So you didn't ask." "Renata, did you know that being listed as a financial guarantor means I'm legally responsible if you default? That this has been on file for 9 years?" That my credit could have been affected without my knowledge? Silence. We weren't going to default, she said quietly. That's not the point, I said. The point is that you made a decision that affected me financially and legally, and you didn't tell me. And you didn't invite me to Thanksgiving for 3 years, but you kept my name on a document that made me responsible for your housing. The words landed. I could hear it in the silence that followed. The particular quality of quiet that comes when something true has been said out loud for the first time. I didn't think about it that way, she finally said. I know, I said. That's the thing, Mom. You didn't think about me when it cost you something. An extra chair, a phone call, an honest conversation. But you thought about me when you needed something. And I need you to understand that I've noticed that. I've noticed it for a very long time. My father called that evening. He didn't try to minimize it the way I'd expected. He sounded old and tired and a little ashamed, which was more than I'd ever gotten from him. He said they'd relied on the idea of me, the idea that I was responsible and solid and would always be there, without ever making me feel like I actually was there. He said he didn't know how to fix it, and he wasn't sure they could, but that he was sorry. I told him I appreciated him saying that. I meant it. My attorney filed the formal dispute with the management company. My name was removed from the lease within 30 days. I signed nothing new. My parents found a different guarantor, a cousin on my father's side who agreed after they explained the situation honestly, which I imagine was an uncomfortable conversation to have. The legal piece settled without further action. I chose not to pursue the forgery as a separate matter. That was a complicated decision, and I made it slowly. What I decided ultimately was that my energy was more valuable spent building my own life than dismantling theirs. 14 months later, this is where things stand. My parents and I are in a different kind of relationship than we've ever had. More honest, less comfortable, genuinely more real. My mother called last November and asked, tentatively, whether I might want to come for Thanksgiving. I went. It was not magical. There was no cinematic reconciliation. I sat at the table with people I had grown up alongside and had learned to hold at a careful distance, and we talked about ordinary things, and it was fine. It was just a meal. But I was counted in the chairs, and that mattered. Danny sat next to me and talked to me the way he always has in private, like someone who is actually glad I exist. We've been getting closer in the past year. He's started to say things to my parents that I think he'd been sitting on for a while. He's figuring out his own relationship to the family dynamic, and watching him do it with his particular brand of gentle persistence has been unexpectedly moving. Gloria retired last spring. We had lunch on her last day and she said, "You know what I'm most proud of professionally?" I thought she was going to say a project or a client or a career milestone. She said, "I'm most proud of the people I saw clearly before they saw themselves." I've been running the Henderson division for 2 years now. We have a team of 11. The work is challenging in the ways that matter and straightforward in the ways that help you sleep. I own my craftsman house with the porch I planned for, and I sit on that porch in the evenings and find it genuinely difficult to be unhappy. I've learned that being the person who notices things, who sees clearly, who says what's true, is not a burden to manage. It is not something to apologize for or suppress or leave at the door of family dinners. It is simply who you are, and the people worth keeping in your life will find it a relief rather than a provocation. My grandmother used to say that being hard to fool and being hard to love were 2 completely different things. It took me a long time to believe she was right. She was right. If you are someone who has been treated as though your presence is a problem to be managed, as though your seat at the table is conditional on your willingness to see less and say less and want less, I want to say this to you plainly. That is a cost they are asking you to pay so that they don't have to examine themselves. It is not a verdict on your worth. You don't have to keep paying it. Find your Gloria. Do precise, excellent work. Build something with your name on it, something they cannot take without your signature. And when someone eventually calls asking for you, make sure you know exactly what it is you're agreeing to. Thank you for staying with me all the way through. If this story found you at the right moment, please like and subscribe. It genuinely helps. Have you ever been the person in your family who was taken for granted, leaned on without being included? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one and I want to hear from you. Until next time, you are not too much. You were just in the wrong room. Go find the right one.